vampire. Well, obviously you've been removed from the show, but you're back now.
Yeah, of course. Okay, wonderful. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and Chaos Space Marine Vindicators to that 6+++ show. I am your host, Tom. I'm back once again with the 6++ 40k team to talk all things Warhammer 40,000 with you, the listener. So thank you very much for tuning in. Excited to have everybody here. Tonight we are talking about bossing the primary. The old primary, the crux of the mission, the thing that makes you get all them points that you love so much. So I've got a series of experts who are very, very familiar with winning on the primary in a bunch of different ways, gathered today to take you through their top tips. Before we do that, we will, of course, do a Plus roundup because we're very good at self-promotion, possibly the best. But before even that, I'm going to introduce you to them. So starting where I always like to start, it is my dear leader, Chris. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm very well. I'm tired, and I had first day. I had a really tough week because half term. Wow.
Oh, so
I was
tough.
ill for the whole of half term. So basically, what happened was went to the ICT and then got just disease, tournament disease, and then was like it felt quite COVID-y for the first half of the week. Then turned into just a full-on cold. But it's all right because I've passed it on to my dad.
So sweet.
Dad is currently dying downstairs.
Oh, bless him.
But I'm better, so that's
good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Before we went on stage, Chris was I was in the chat saying hello to Ed and Rob, and Chris was just sort of head down, just like he was trying not to
silently
get anyone's attention, just sort of like getting himself in the zone, ready. Like, how am I going to pretend to be a living, breathing person for an hour and a half? But he's got it together now. Excellent. Chris, have you done any hobby in recent times? Anything new in your hobby life?
No. No, I've not done it. The problem is, guys, is that I've got Ed's all these grey knights here, which are very shiny red.
Not mine, just to clarify.
Yeah, that'll be Ed.
I just can't be asked. Like, I've got 10 paladins there, which I ran at ITT, and I've got my own paladins, but I'm like, I can't bother to paint them. Just can't bother. What's the point? There's loads of stuff I could be painting.
Yes.
I have not. No, I want to paint Castellan Crow. Like, that's a cool model, but it involves me getting the airbrush out because all my basic metals are done for the army with airbrush. So yeah, it's just can't be asked. Sorry, guys.
I understand. When you're tired, not easy to find that extra energy. And I've had this before with my Eldar where I've got two schemes because I've changed my mind about what I liked. And actually that creates a real mental impasse when you're looking at them. You're like, oh, one way or the other, this is a huge mission now. And I don't want to do it.
The stuff for my actual list, like purifiers, I would actually need to build and sort out purifiers. So I've just got archetypes at the moment. So I've got a 3-day event, a 3-player team event coming up this weekend. Nice. Whilst many of you are off gallivanting at Warhammer World, so basically it was Jamie Clifford, Jamie Easton, Dave were going to this event, and then Dave went, "Screw you guys, I'm going to Warhammer World." So I got the call up, and they're like, "Nice." So we're it's like I think it's only 8 teams, so basically you're going to play every team. Jack Chapman's playing for some other team.
What?
I know.
That's crazy.
That's shocking.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, it's Tabletop Republic, which is obviously very good.
Oh, lovely. I love Tabletop Republic.
So yeah, I'll be giving the Grey Knights a little spin there.
You'll have a great time with the two Jamies, right? That's a classic.
Yeah, it'll be a laugh. It's not
OGs in the team, so that's awesome.
It really is. The OGs just have a laugh, roll some dice, and see how it goes.
Amazing, yeah. And as you've alluded to, I'm off to Warhammer World with a few others this week. I had a few days of actual rest and was like, let's do it. Let's just go straight back into it once again. Hungry for all things chaos at the moment.
That golden ticket, baby.
Oh yeah, I'm absolutely going to win that. That'll be delicious. I can't wait to incur the financial costs of that if that occurs. But also going to Warhammer World and joining us tonight is the lovely Rob Kimpton. Rob, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Excited for the weekend. Get back to Warhammer World. Get some good games.
Yes, I've never been to a Warhammer World event, so I'm very excited. I've obviously been there a few times, but I've not sampled these events. And I think my understanding is that with the terrain set up in tent, they work really well, right? Because the boards have a nice sort of fixed standard that works for a lot of different missions and situations. So, what are you taking to the Warhammer World event?
I am taking Drukhari Shock Horror.
Oh, amazing! That's so good.
It's pretty standard list, a bit more shooting than usual.
Nice. I think that's wise. Yeah, and it was an event like this that you won a golden ticket.
It was last year. I got best overall, so I think I finished 5th or 6th, but got the good guy votes. So scraped through on that.
So it might well be possible. You never know. Maybe Rob can charm everyone. Do it again. That'd be very, very cool.
Buy people beer, bribery. It's all bribery.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you done any hobbying in preparation for this? Or I guess with the Drakari, you're pretty ready to go.
Well, I've had to cut my Lilith apart again and pin her because I stepped on her about a year ago. So she's been at a very sharp lean. So I've chopped her into pieces and
once that foot goes on that rock, it's curtains.
The foot and the hair.
They're both just beautiful but incredibly precarious joins on the Lilith model. As soon as they take a hit, it's over.
It's very sad when I did that. And what else? I've finished edge highlighting my beast pack. So edge highlighting 18 birds' wings. That was good fun. That was a good, probably about 4 hours spent for about 12 points.
Rewarding.
for the turn that it's on the board. That'll look amazing. I'm also joined tonight by the lovely Ed Fawcett, my favourite Ed. Ed, how are you doing?
Excellent. That's the right opinion to have. I'm doing all right. Also been busy. You mentioned that you'd been away doing a non-Warhammer weekend. I've also been away doing a non-Warhammer. I was at a stag do.
Nice.
I don't really drink. Not because, no moral reasons. I just kind of fell out with it. So I was just at a stag do doing all the things that everyone who was drunk was doing, but not drunk, which is always an experience.
It's interesting.
Including having to take a forfeit of eating some, horrible ghost pepper concoction. Should have done better at the game, shouldn't I?
Yeah, absolutely.
If I didn't want to do a forfeit, I should have A, gone to a stag do, and B, done badly.
Yes, that makes sense.
Them's the breaks. I will say, the one event that I was in, I was done over. There were 12 eggs. The game was 4 teams. We each smash an egg against our head. The one who gets the boiled egg instead of the raw egg wins. It's like an egg roulette. But the boiled egg is the good one because you're not covered in egg. Anyway, I went 4th.
Yeah.
So, in theory, the best position to be in because you've got the highest
in the boiled egg smash face game.
Exactly.
Famously. Yeah, the win rates all confirm that.
First one, picked it up, gave it a bit of a shake. I was like, I know this. So I had it in the napkin and I had another napkin in my hand. So boom, boom, jobs are good. Second one, picked up. At this point, this is the, there must have been 16, I guess. Yeah, whatever. Picked this up and I was like, oh, this feels solid. So confidently, didn't even pick up a napkin. Turns out, just an egg. Egg on my face, wasn't there? So, covered in egg, dripping, napkin off, whatever, it's fine. Get round to my third egg. Third egg, I'm like, I can't tell. I'm going to be cautious. Napkined it. It was a runny egg. Terrible times for me. This is where, you feel like it's all gone wrong. And then you watch the other 3 people go, there's a 1 in 4. There's a 1 in 3. There's a 1 in 2. I've got the boiled egg. And you pick it up and you confidently smash it on your face. And of course, it's a fucking runny egg because the best man is a dickhead.
Amazing.
He was on my team as well. That's part of the reason we had to do the forfeit.
Oh, I like that. That sounds like a fun game. I've never seen that played. That's extremely entertaining.
It works better if you're drunk or surrounded by drunk people. I don't know if it would work in like a Warhammer content.
Potentially not. I don't think we try that at Warhammer World. I'm not sure they'll appreciate it. They might get in trouble for that.
Yeah, the amount they charge for eggs, you'll probably be run you £100 or something. But other than that, I've got an event this weekend, and
yes, you do.
I've got a lot of stuff to do for it. It's an old world event.
What are you taking, and where is it?
Nomadic Horde, which is orcs on mounts, basically.
Amazing. Okay.
So I've got a little chariot here, one of 3.
Well, I've seen a chariot on the video that went out today, so that was
indeed cool. Yeah. You should go and watch it if you haven't. It's got Tom in it.
I am in it.
I'm not going to tell you what he's painted, but it's really nice.
I've painted a thing. I've ditched the Beastmen for a bit. I'm trying something different. You can go watch the video, find out what
it is. The nicest thing I've ever seen Tom paint, so go and have a look at that.
Yes. I'm doing a new thing where I'm not speed painting anything for anything anymore. I'm just borrowing like a lazy scrounger. So thank you to Jack Tight for bankrolling my efforts. And what that does mean is that what I am painting looks really nice. It also means there's a lot less of it getting done. But I think I'm happy with that. I'm enjoying not adding the stress of completing an army for an event to my current
because I've jumped into Old World as an experienced hobbyist at this point, like not just playing but also going to events. I'm like, I'm just gonna go into an army. I'm gonna get as much of it as like done nicely as I can. I'm gonna box it up. I'm gonna keep it safe, and I'm gonna do another army. And in a year's time, I'm going to have everything, and it's going to be great.
You absolutely will. I'm excited to see how you get on. That'll be really fun.
Probably win like 2 or 3 games. I don't have high hopes for this. I don't think it's a super competitive list, but it's a fun list. It is full really send. If there was primary in Old World, they wouldn't score any of it.
Thank you, Ed. That's reminded me where I'm supposed to be trying to get eventually. So we'll try and move our way back towards the topic of the show. Pickleax in the chat says egg ++ content is the content I subscribe for, and I'm completely with you, Pickleax. So you can expect Ed's Tactica guide on how to win the egg game.
Can I offer you an egg in this trying time?
So let's do some shout outs in the chat, and then we'll let Chris do the Plus roundup. So evening to Martin Dorr, who's in. Hello, Existence UK. Lovely to have you here. Sam Dunn is in. Zito is in. Pickleax is in as well. Brilliant. Do holler if you're in here and you haven't piped up already. Let us know what you're doing. Are you hobbying? Are you desperately looking through the GW mission pack, trying to figure it out like I was doing earlier on? Actually, very hard to mentally visualize those maps when you look at them in terms of where things go. It's taking me a few attempts, but quite enjoyable. All right. So, Chris, let's get that self-promotion wagon out of the station. What's new in the world of the Plus?
Well, we didn't do one last week. So
what?
I know. What?
Scrivo?
I fired Scrivo, don't I?
That's all right.
I think we were just too excited to talk about all the lovely people that we'd played, all the viewers who had tuned in to check us out.
Yeah, and thank you, Scrivo, because you hosted like a champ. I really enjoyed listening to you.
Anyway.
Go on then.
So what did we do 2 weeks ago? So
over 2 weeks of content.
2 weeks ago, so much content. To be fair, it's not been a huge amount. Tom, as we know, is the Team England astropath. And that means he's giving everyone all the interesting facts and information about Team England and their quest to win gold at the WTC. And we've got his discussion on the Team England selection process. So that's the captain's log episode, where he talks to Tony Chu about how that process can happen of selecting England. We had my episode 4 on Grey Knights, where I spoke about my games at the ITT. If you're interested in Grey Knights and how they play in teams, then I went through in detail all my games.
Absolutely.
We've had a couple of orc-themed videos. So we've got Cracking the Codex, Ed and Scrivo talk about Dreadmob and pushing the button. Then
hell yeah.
Scrivo went and spoke about Is Bully in a classic clickbait title.
It was unbelievable. Couldn't believe it.
Bully Boy,
outrageous.
The best teams list. And there's only one way to find out, guys.
You have to go and watch it. You have to go and watch it. It's the only way.
The other way is to take Bully Boys to teams, but it's way easier just to watch a quite well-produced video that's really entertaining.
It's really nice as well. Yeah.
£300 all 15 minutes of your time.
Ultimately, yeah.
There you go. And what a glowing review there, guys. So make sure you definitely check that out. Then we've got the first player profile for Team England, where Tom interviews Captain Tony Chu, and all the I don't know how regularly you're planning on doing it, Tom, but you're going to be like drip feeding.
Yeah, we're chipping away, right? We've got a good few weeks till the event itself, and I'm trying to get around the entire team and have interviews and little segments recorded with the whole team. So we've got the next one's already recorded with Vic BJ, so we'll just keep those rolling over the next few weeks.
Nice. We have got a host of members only content on the way. So if you've been thinking, don't want to become a member, I don't know. Well, Tom has just released a brand new series called Counterplay Plus, because we're original like that. Do you want to talk about it, Tom?
Yeah, so this isn't quite as good as Egg Plus Plus, but I am fairly proud of it. I think it's ended up quite nice. And the idea with this is, I think there's a sort of running theme I see in players when they're reacting, especially online. And I know it's not a useful thing to read what people are saying online, but there's the knee-jerk reaction to new problems as they are presented in the game is go, blah, don't want to deal with it, hate it, make it go away, stop it, nerf it. And I guess what I want to do with Counterplay Plus Plus is get you a little bit of an insight into how certainly we in the team go about dealing with new things that emerge in the game, which is, well, how do you solve it? It's a problem, it needs answers. What are the weaknesses, what are the solutions? So I've picked two of the units I've seen perhaps some of the most noise about so far in the last few weeks, which is Warp Talons and Meganobs. And Warp Talons is now out on members only, with Meganobs to come shortly afterwards. And yeah, it's a little 15-minute video. It's going to tell you the ins and outs of how and why that unit is a problem and what you need to do to solve it. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. And yeah, if you've got ideas for other ones you'd like to see, leave some comments, let us know, and I can work through a bunch of units.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea here is where these sort of videos will be members and then eventually will go out to the general masses.
Exactly that.
We've got more stuff coming. So Ed, Watts and myself sat down on TTS and recorded for like an hour straight, as I was basically a host whilst Ed just showed various combat tricks. So it's going to be a brand new series called Combat 101, in which we go through kind of not the basics of combat, but like that next stage up, like how you can go about manipulating the charge, piling, consolidates in a way that you see fit, wrapping transports, destroying things in transports and just through combat, move blocking, getting over to objectives, even though you shouldn't really be able to get over to them. We cover. There's 8 episodes, and they're going to become. I'm aiming to get them all out tomorrow for members. So all 8 will be out for members, and then we'll release one a week for the general.
Amazing.
For the general thing. Then on top of that, I've created a show which is a working title because the team didn't like it, of Psychology Plus Plus.
I like that. I think keep the branding simple.
Exactly.
Right?
We had naysayers about how it was too complicated, but whatever.
We had some great clickbait titles in the.
What about Mind Palace Plus?
Yeah, Mind Palace was definitely good.
I like that.
Anyway, so
I think that was your idea, Ed.
Yeah,
that's probably why I like it.
Yeah,
exactly.
What sort of handsome genius came up with that name?
But the idea is there'll be a series of short videos focusing on different psychological aspects of the game. So the first one I've drafted up and I've done the PowerPoint and stuff is about managing how to not tilt, and it goes into like the kind of the science behind it, and then things you can try and adjust long term or overall as a person to not tilt. And then also things you can do at the tabletop to try and not tilt.
That's super exciting. That sounds really useful.
So just like, and then if there's other things people are interested in, I can kind of do those as well. So yeah, we've got lots and lots on the horizon.
Busy
and yes,
boys.
Fine.
It's all thanks to your support. So a reminder, please to hit like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. That really, really helps. Shout out to Martin Dorr, who's just become a member in the chat. This is exactly what helps drive the content machine. So if you haven't signed up to become a member, you're interested in doing it, please do. It's amazing having so many members supporting us now. We'd love to see that continue to grow so we can continue spending inordinate amounts of time thinking about how to deal with silly model toys in a game. I'm really enjoying that, and we're all here for it. So reminder as well, if you're interested in getting some mentoring or coaching, you can sign up to become a chapter master, and you can get in touch with myself and Chris, and hopefully in the very near future Rob as well will be able to help you with some friendly TTS games, calls, chats and advice. Been really, really enjoying those. We've got a few new people coming in at the moment, so we're just getting those early conversations started. The range of armies we need to understand is gradually broadening. It's not just Votan and Drakari anymore. I've got to get my noodle around a whole bunch of different stuff. But actually, it's really fun doing that. And it's very, very enjoyable playing TTS games with. It turns out our listeners, lovely people. Who knew? We've attracted a bunch of really nice people, and the games have been really, really fun so far. You'll also be able to participate in future TTS leagues. We've been running our first TTS league, which is currently for chapter masters and mentees and the Plus itself. And we've had some really fun and entertaining games. Me and Rob played an incredibly stupid game last night, which was Speedwar versus Drakari with no guns, which was Rob setting himself a personal challenge of how do I win the game purely by standing in the way of things. So that was really, really enjoyable. So shout out to everyone who's been playing the games in that as well. Wonderful. Okay, that's us done with the promotional side for now. So we are going to launch into the discussion, and that is about the primary today. Now, we've got new missions down the road. We've played this pack for a long time, and the primary is a thing that in 40k for a long time has been a very fundamental part of it. And so I think we're dealing with a change coming up in the game, but I think what we're going to do today is talk about the primary in quite general and fundamental terms, think a little bit about what the basics for you as a player in trying to score well and do well on the primary are, and hopefully there'll be lessons there that will carry over and actually serve you well as you start to figure out a new set of missions and a new rules pack in the near future. So I'm going to open it up with a very general and abstract question that's a little bit possibly too vague to start off with and throw that to my cast of players. Why does the primary matter? Who is primary and why should we care?
It's over half the points, isn't it?
It's more points than secondary.
Yeah.
Yes, Ed. That's a big one. You score more points on it than secondaries. People have missed this sometimes in 10th edition.
And you know how the change to the game came in 10th, where you go, oh, here's my tactical deck. I can shuffle up some cards, and every turn, look at my deck, believe in the heart of the cards. I summon 8 points in attack mode. Oh, hey, I've got your home objective, whatever. It's really hard to deny secondary unless you're playing like some very specific armies that do some very specific bullshit. It's very easy to plan out to deny primary because you just go, you get primary if you're stood on 2 objectives. I'm going to stop you from standing on 2 objectives.
Yes.
And it's not Galaxy Brain.
No, absolutely, and this is one of the things that we'll get into is that sometimes just knuckling down and getting on with the primary is your best way of actually encountering another army in the game, because there's all sorts of armies who will do anything to stop you encountering them in all sorts of situations. But if you go and stand on the discs and play the disc game, eventually they're like, oh, fine, actually, I really don't want you to be there, so I'm going to have to come and play the game now. So primary is a very good way of getting your opponent's attention very quickly in a game, which is nice into all sorts of tricksy matchups as well. What else do you think, Chris and Rob?
Go on, Rob.
Yeah. It's points, isn't it? It's scoring points, but as you kind of alluded to, it's also denying points.
Yes.
We're playing a game where we're both aiming to score more points than the other, and that could be aiming for the 100, or it could be aiming for your opponent to only score 50.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And you scoring more than that. So, it's kind of twofold, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And in a singles environment, and I've seen you play this way many, many times, you can have a razor-tight control on this as well, right? Where the whole game has like, I'm coming in 10 higher, and whatever you do, I've got all the tools here to make that really, really difficult to stop. And having a razor-sharp focus on making sure you get that edge on the primary in-game often means that even if the military situation goes really wrong, or is really painful, actually you can still win the game. I'm sure new players, you all have had experiences where you've done that thing. You're like, I've killed him to death. And then the numbers came up at the end, and I have lost significantly. And I'm like, what has happened here? What has actually gone on? There's nothing left on the board. I feel like I should have won that, but I haven't. And that's where the primary is so crucial.
There's nothing more satisfying than getting to the end of a game and being completely tabled and looking at the score points. You're like, that's a 30-point win.
It's the best. It's the absolute best feeling in the game. It's
the first time that happens to you, it requires you to take some real introspection. You're like, but I beat him fair and square. It's not fair. Oh, but I did let him get all those points. If only I'd denied him primary.
His tactics were flawless, but his forces lie decimated. Anything to add, Chris?
I think one of the offshots of focusing on primary is obviously it gives you board control. And as soon as you have board control, that has various other positive aspects in terms of scoring secondaries, denying secondaries. I think it's just an important part of the game because it enables some armies which aren't about killing to function. If all armies had the same ability to focus in on like the primary, but they were cut differently in terms of their output maybe, but it's another balancing act that GW has. You can either have your armies that are designed to dominate primary, generally like the slower, more resilient builds, and you've got the other armies who maybe are slightly hard or more glass cannon-y type thing, but they can deny primary, take your elves and that sort of thing. It's like, I'm not really going to hold primary very well because it's tough, but at the same time, I'm going to be doing a good job of denying it as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Ed's making a face. Something's
I've
happening.
Just realised this is unfair. I've just realised how you've set this show up, I'm the only one who plays properly. You all I'm going to stand at the edge of the board, and I've visualized everything in my mind palace, and I'm like, 18 go through.
You are really, really good at going and standing on the points, Ed.
It's
you
a good job.
You always have it.
One here because I got to make up for.
I was going to say the first few games me and Ed played against each other were textbook that kind of game where Ed's like, I am on all the points, stuff is happening, and I was like, I'm in the corners, I'm trying to spook my way around.
Well, I mean, also let's be very clear, you won all of them.
The sneakiness gets the better rules.
Yeah, that's why it annoys me, because I'm like, but I don't want to play that way. I want to stand on objectives and live.
Yeah, I think the current 10th rule set is set up quite well, that I do feel like there's a good balance. I think there are armies that win across that whole spectrum right now, and I also think stuff like OC has been fantastic for opening that up as well. What do you think?
I actually, sorry, I need to walk back on that one. I think that's only true because the two armies that do it really, really well are broken. Like, Necrons shouldn't have Wraiths still. Like, the more I play Wraiths, the more I'm like, but it's not okay, though. But why?
They are very silly.
Like, they are very silly. Every time I'm going to a 40k event, I'm like, well, I could just bust out the Wraiths again. And I could just keep doing it. It's legal. It feels illegal.
I don't hate it. I think it's all right. I think it's nice to have a few that can boss the problem.
100% agree. Here's the problem. They also gave you sneaky scoot around the edge of detachment rules at the same time, and I shouldn't be able to have both. That's the problem.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, so I think there's a lot to bear in mind there. And I think one of the things we'll hopefully get into as well is that primary play in a game is often a little bit about feinting, pretending, faking. It's not always about actually actively trying to shove your entire army somewhere. And often the illusion or the low cost play of the primary is a real way of armies interacting with each other in a way of making them come out to play and start killing each other. So there's a sort of layer above this. And again, this is another new player experience. I know I've had this where you get about 2 turns in and you're like, I just feel like I'm just doing everything they want because I'm sending things to get the things they're putting there, and then they're killing my thing with a bigger thing, and now I've got no things to send. And ultimately, at that higher level, the primary is there, and you're walking into it and trying to play it, but actually there's a sort of sub-game going on where actually it's playing it at low cost and drawing assets out and getting people involved in the game so you can start putting them away. That's a really big part of high-level play as well. So hopefully we'll be able to unpack and get in some of that today as well. So let's move it forwards. Let's think about perhaps some of the main styles and approaches. We've alluded to it already, but different armies play this in different ways. So let's think about some of the archetypes, some of the main kind of approaches you can have to primary scoring in general. Obviously, I think it's important to recognize missions vary greatly. We will allude to some of the more specialized ones as we go. But in general, obviously, primary is going to reward you for managing to hold points through into your command phase or managing to capture points at the end of turn. There are obviously a couple of variables outside of that. But what are the different types of approach you can adopt to going about engaging with that kind of primary score?
The obvious one is I play something that's really tanky with a half-decent OC and it sits in the middle of the board. It doesn't die. You get really annoyed and I win points.
100%. Yeah, so you can take a massively durable and effective, decent OC set of units, you can shove them in the midboard and you can say, this is a problem. What's going to happen now? And that can be extremely effective. So obviously there's a whole bunch of armies that do this. Necrons right now, Death Guard are very good at this. Custodes historically have been good at this. The old Accursed Cultist build, Black Templar Horde, the list that only Ed Watts runs, but we're all terrified of. Nobody wants to deal with it. I know. I'm actively avoiding him. I'm sorry, Ed. I love you wherever you are. I know how that game goes. I already know, and it's me drowning into lots and lots of intercessors.
It's the intercessors are the thing. I played into it, right? He's got 2 bricks of 20 Crusaders. He's got loads of heavy intercessors. And I'm like, right, lightning fast strike. Drop those 20 mans, and then just, heavy intercessors don't do anything. But, they just don't die. So, you just, by the end of turn 5, I'd almost got through it, and I lost by 30 points. And I was like,
he's just standing there on the points.
He's not fucking
menacingly.
He's gone first. He stood there, and there's nothing I've been able to do. I shot him, and he walked towards me.
It's making it worse. It's not helping at all. I tried to fight him off it, and then I died.
Those 5 guys have managed to kill an entire purifier brick with those bloody chainsaws. Oh, great. Cool.
Absolutely. So Black Templar hordes are really, especially the way Ed runs it, it's quite infamous at this stage. It's a really good example of if you build a really nasty toolkit of tricks onto a very stodgy primary playing list, it just creates a situation that a lot of armies simply cannot math their way out of, whatever it is they're thinking and trying to do. And so you'll often see good primary armies do represent something of a skew. I think they do tend towards being more of a skew because they need to lean hard into the attributes that make them able to do that. If their plan is to go out and invite an entire army onto them, they need to be particularly effective at doing that. So obviously Mega Knobs in Bully Boys or Green Tide right now are both good examples of lists that are doing that by going all in on something that in theory is very stodgy into a lot of different things. Okay, so that's perhaps the most obvious. I guess that's a kind of brawler, right? Primary brawling. Go get stuck in, stand on points, make stuff happen. What other kinds of approaches are
there? Primary denial. So
there we go. And what armies, Rob, like to play primary denial?
Drukhari are very
good at it. Oh, that's funny, isn't it? Yeah, they are good at that. Yeah, they love that.
Eldar are good at it. There's anything with high OC, fast infantry or fast units.
Tyranids as well, another example.
Tyranids are brilliant at it. I've played against Davey before, and is unending swarm, and he kills nothing and still just covers the board and wins. It's all about setting up trades for units while you're denying points. So someone puts a 400-point unit on a central point, and I throw 45 points worth of OC 10 witches on there and say you have to deal with these now, and you have to spend your big resource.
Exactly that. I've seen the eye rolling people do as 5 more witches come out is well worth it, right? You're like, yep, here are 5 more idiots, and you know there's 5 more coming in a minute. So
you're gonna have to do it again.
Change your plan, buddy. This isn't going to work.
This sort of thing breaks you as a primary control player to the point where you look at every flamer with lust in your eyes. I was talking to my mate Craig. He's looking at CSM, and we were going through, and I was like, "Oh, what does this unit do?" He's like, "No, it's terrible." I was like, "Well, let's just have a look at it. This is how you find, things that people have maybe missed." And I was looking at the 45-point character, the cool one with the flamer. I was like,
"Yes,
D6 plus 3. It's a flamer.
It's battle shocking as well, isn't it?"
I was like, maybe there's something here. It's strength 5, AP 1 damage, and I was like, but that's only for one matchup across 2 events that I'm going to. Yeah. And I want to run 3 of them. It doesn't feel like it's worthwhile.
Right, just pack that Drukhari tech in. Just get ready to melt witches.
Yeah, I feel like CSM should probably be able to beat Drukhari with or without flamers. So maybe we don't tech for that matchup.
Yeah, CSM and Drukhari are an interesting one in as much as CSM sort of in some ways also are a primary denial army, but they're a more sort of permanent primary denial army, right? When we get here, we're going to get here properly, and we're going to leave a huge crater, and then we're going to move on. But they can do the tradie MSU type thing as well, obviously. So primary denial, very potent. Obviously, all focused on I need to strangle my opponent's score. I need to shut it down. I need to keep it nice and low. And that eventually, no matter what the casualty rate is going to produce a situation where I am going to be a lot more sort of up on the points, and I'll win that way. And fragile armies like this, because fragile armies don't want to get hit where they live, so they want to go and do silly things where the opponent lives. And so projecting threat, nice and quick, speedy things, taking the back objective with some warp spiders because lol, they can. These kinds of classics, I'm sure you'll have encountered them, are sort of in the art of the more sort of fragile primary denial type armies. Obviously, Tyranids have Shadow in the Warp as well to really juice that up as well. So there's a Battle Shock introduces other ways to do this. Night Lords presumably would be good at primary denial if I attempt to play them again.
If only Battle Shock was a rule worth teching into.
The Kroot detachment in Tau does this. It's very funny with its massed waves of Kroot blocking and scoring.
That's why we see all those Kroot GT wins.
There's so many Kroot GT wins, mate. I'm still trying to book Carl Grundy in for State of Play Kroot. I just want you to do State of Play Kroot. I'm not bothered about Tau. I want a Kroot specific State of Play. So hopefully we'll get that booked in. So I mean, those are 2 very common archetypes. Is there anything else out there? Would you say?
I think in the sense of the game overall, you you only need to hold 2 points in most missions, right?
Yeah.
So there's those armies that just go, you know what, I'm going to hold my home and I'm going to put something big and tanky in the middle, and then I'm going to score my secondaries. I know I'm going to score 80, 90, 85, 90, 100 points every game. Just doing what I want to do while you can't interact with this mid-board objective.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the middle ground there. You don't have to skew one way.
Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of, I guess, secure a chunk of ground and then project from there. This is a very common plan for a lot of armies now. I think this is something I often see with newer players, but also spoilers. This is whenever I lose a game these days, it's because I've done exactly this. I have an army that can't play for the entire board, and I'm like, I'm still playing elves. I'm going to go and be everywhere. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And then you're like, oh, my Thousand Sons have been tabled immediately because you can't do that with them, and this was a mistake. So a lot of armies, with the asset and reach that they have, want to essentially lock down a side very securely, get those 2 points. A lot of boards are set up to allow them to do that, and then they're going to push and project into each other from there. And so I guess there's a kind of solidity build, isn't it? It's not saying I can be everywhere. It's saying I can get a good chunk locked down. I've then got guns, melee, reach to try and jostle my way into a better position on the board. I'd say Votann are quite like this. They can't be everywhere, not since points changes, but they're very good at being solid in a particular place, locking a chunk of the board down. I think that's probably the closest to a stodgy primary army I've played in a while, Votann, really, with the sort of being on the points. They're definitely quite durable. Another one I wanted to raise is a sort of primary bait army, and this is gun lines, right? For all those horrible shooty, I've got a million tanks lists, they also have 20 idiots who they're going to use to make you think they want to play the primary. When they don't, what they want is to table you. That's their goal. But you need some Crusaders or some Legionnaires to run out, be just annoying enough that the opponent has to start playing the game, at which point they go, oh, actually, I've got 9 tanks, and that was my real plan all along. And so I think the primary plays into the hand of those kinds of armies quite a lot, and they're trying to use small units to bait you out. And I remember the sort of land speeders, when they were a thing, they were really annoying for this, right? Space Marine Iron Hands land speeders just bopping out. It's like 60, 70 points. All that really wants you to do is try and deal with it, and then you're going to get whacked by a big tank somewhere.
As if you've used that as the example and not, the horror of 3 editions, Venoms.
Oh, Venoms don't count. Venoms are fine. I don't know what you're on about.
They definitely don't have idiots inside who are just there to be like, oh, no, you should probably come and deal with this transport. Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Drakari absolutely do play a little bit that way as well.
Although you were saying specifically shooting. So.
But transport armies, you're right, though. For combat armies, transports are really good for this, right? Their transports are a great way of creating a sort of a problem that needs extensive commitment to prevent primary loss, because otherwise it's like, well, there's no point getting the transport because the idiot's just going to fall on it, which means either I need to expose 2 units or it's not going to get sorted. And then that, again, gets that trading game going. So there's armies that want to use primary sort of tug of war almost to start trading up and getting that kind of asset advantage in the game as well. But yeah, I'm never convinced Black Templar's Ironstorm really cares about winning the primary, really. It just needs to leverage it just long enough to do the thing it really wants to do, and then it can move on. Okay, wonderful. Any others, guys, before we move it forwards?
I was thinking of it. I don't know if I'd say that those are like 2 of the options, the primary denial or the primary control, or whether it's more of like a spectrum where armies fall is kind of how I think of it.
Oh, definitely. Yes, yeah. Definitely.
And then obviously you have aspects of, so like the Wraith list is not only primary control, but it's also primary denial because it's got really good overwatch, it's got reactive move, it's got everything, man. I'm going to stop waxing lyrical about the 6 stratagems that you've got in Canoptic Court, because
that's why it's beautiful.
About it for an hour.
That's the exact thing with the trap that list sets, right? Because it's like, I'm here. If you try and deal with it, I'm going to get closer than if you didn't. So why don't you just leave me here and let me do my thing? In which case, I'm still getting what I want. And that's the beauty of the reactive move.
So a good example from the ITT with the Wraiths was I was in a position where my Black Templar opponent had a big brick of potential advance and charge Crusaders that would have done a fair whack of damage to my Wraiths. And they could have, obviously, I was hiding my character, but he has the agency in the movement phase. If he gets a big advance and he goes for the advance and charge, could probably precision out the character, then they just fall over. So I set it up so I'd measured. I was like, okay, so you're 6.5 inches away from this objective. So you can either choose to give your unit the advance and charge buff and lose the better feel no pain, at which point you have to commit advance and then I fall back with my reactive move and it's easy for me to kill you. Or you go, I'm going to keep the feel no pain. I'm just going to advance, get enough models onto the point to deny you primary, and then take the fight later on. And both of those are bad options for him.
Yeah.
I think he then rolled a 1 and didn't move from behind the wall anyway.
Oh, bless him.
Great times.
But yeah, I think that's right. It's definitely a case where the archetypes bleed into one another a little bit and have certain things that they're good at and certain things. But there's certainly armies that have a toolkit that want them to play in a certain way. And it's interesting because even within the same book, that can be the case, right? If you think about something like Hypercrypt, that's not innately strong on the primary. It will often have like a Wraith brick in there, so it can anchor, but actually it's going to use its mobility to blast you apart and then move on to the points. In that sense, it's actually more like a GSC or a Grey Knights, where it wants to bop around first and then come onto the primary.
Without going too off topic, I haven't looked at Hypercrypt since the monolith got nerfed. Do you maybe just run 18 Wraiths and Hypercrypt?
Maybe.
Is that maybe just the way forward?
Maybe that's good. I've never seen it done. I'd be interested to try it. I'm going to do a few shout outs into the chat before we move it on. Thank you, Dan Blazeheart, for your nice comments about the show. He says that I used to love primary, now my custodians just die on it instead. Yeah, sorry about that, man. That's tough. That's a tough break. It's not quite been long enough yet that I'm genuinely sorry for Custodes, but we're steadily getting there. We are steadily getting there now.
The way you said that made it sound like you were responsible. Yeah, sorry about that, man.
I wish I had that kind of power. Gordon Chung says, "Thanks, Tom, for breaking my new toy, presumably about warp talents." Yeah, sorry, Gordon. I mean, they're still, if it helps, they're still really hard to deal with, even if you're doing all the right things. So. Luke Harris is in. Love to have you here, Luke. Mechanicus says, "Stand in the way so you can't even get there." That's a very valid one for 10th. There's a much
way, isn't it?
Yeah, a much bigger role for blocking in general now. Jail type armies is actually something we probably could have covered, so that's a really good contribution. Armies where they're going to die in front of the points. That's the idea. Just keep blocking, keep putting waves of stuff in front. Actually, Drakari, again, can do this sometimes. Sometimes this is the way. You're like, I just need to die in droves in front of the objectives, and then they can't get there, and then things are okay. But lots of armies do this. The Wolf Jail list obviously does this. Admech can do it with all of their little metal idiots standing in front of all the guns. And Paint Celestine's in as well and says, "My favourite way of holding primary is literally covering the front half of an objective with the Triumph, then telling my opponent that you will need to kill her to take the objective." Yeah, I mean, that would do it. Putting like Rotigus or something on a point is really funny. Just shove an enormous, massive base all over it. That creates big problems. And Luke Harris says, "I have a small RTT after Bristol, so I will give the 18 Hyper Wraiths a go." There you go, Ed. You've got an acolyte. Someone's going with you on the Hyper Wraith quest.
Hyper Wraiths.
Wonderful. So let's take this to a sort of development focused angle now and think about how you can improve your primary game. If you guys were advising someone who's still starting out in the game, trying to get their head around the primary, or someone who's a good player but is wanting to sort of sharpen up and develop even further, what are the sort of things we can do to improve and develop our primary game?
So I'd say there's the two things I would probably focus on. Number one is actually counting your scores. I think
absolutely,
been like the amount of times people just aren't paying attention to the fact that you can only cap out at 50 and what is the mission asking of you. So you quite often see things like people running onto 3 points when it's a hold 1, hold 2, and you're not actually gaining anything from being on that third point. So that's like quite a basic one. But as you go through, be like trying to project, like, what are you scoring? Are you getting, because like, if it's a hold 1, hold 2, well, that's 40 out of 50 you're getting. Yes. And then zip priority targets, right? So it's a 10, 10, 10, 10. And then at the end of the game, hold 2, 10, you've got your max.
Yes.
So so not only is that important to know for yourself, but it's also important to know for your opponent. Like, I don't know, you might, let's say you get to a point where it's turn 4 and you're like, I can give them a 5. Yes. But actually, they're always going to get a 10. They've already had a 15. And they're going to end on 50 anyway. And you giving them a 5 literally just gives them a unit for free.
Yes, exactly that.
And so I think I don't... Most games I play into, a lot of opponents at tournaments, they're not paying any attention to like kind of the specifics of the numbers behind how many points you can score. So just start, literally, even if it's just having a bit of paper, just counting it out. Like what then? For me, it's like now it's before the game. what do I think is a realistic one? Oh, it's a hold 1, hold 2. Like that's a big thing playing a lot of teams.
I mean, you're probably better at this than anyone I can think of in our team in terms of knowing what's coming and mapping it.
It's just really helpful, isn't it? Like, in especially in teams, to be able to go right. Well, so like for example, when I played into the Black Templars, it was, well, I'm going to get 5, 5, 5. Well, I'm going to get this score, and then I'm going to be able to get this on my secondaries probably, and I'm going to end up on like kind of this, and it just helps. And with that in mind, I think the other thing I probably see a lot of is people just go, oh, I'll just move this onto here, but they've not actually paid any attention realistically to what their opponent can do. Like, it's quite simple. You measure their stuff and go, can you get onto my primary this turn? No. Sweet. Okay, well, what angles can you get to shoot onto my primary this turn? Okay, cool. Right. And then you just work it out. And obviously there become problems when it's fucking green tide and they're halfway across the board. And you're like, oh, well, looks like you're hitting all my objectives this turn. That's a slightly different issue. But especially early game, like, be trying to do it. And I'll say one more thing, so just so you thought of it. Sorry. No, I won't talk any more after this.
No, it's good. It's nice. I thought you were going to pass out a while ago, so it's good that you're still going.
There's a big psychological thing in terms of your opponent being put off from attacking your primary. So, like, if you put just like 5 dudes on there, your opponent is far more likely to be like, actually, I could probably just nick this off them and just give them a 5 or whatever. Whereas, so what I found, like the Grey Knights, is if I put 5 strikes and 5 terminators on my natural expansion objective, as long as I can't get shot really easily, then that is 25 OC on some reasonably durable bodies. And it's like, it's not an option. My opponent doesn't entertain that as an option. No. And if I think back to the games I lose compared to I win, let's say it's the diagonal deployment, the ones which go well are the ones where you've got your locked down natural expansion objective and you're making the plays onto their natural expansion. The ones you lose are the ones where you're fighting over your natural expansion. All the fighting's happening over your natural expansion objective, and sometimes you're only getting 5s, and they're just going to get that 5, 10, maybe even 15-point addition over the game. So it's about locking down that natural expansion objective, pushing forward to their one. The middle one very rarely comes up, does it? It depends on your army. I mean, Ed's Templar Horde, sure. But,
I think very confident primary armies will go there, but then a lot of others aren't entertaining it in the early game, right?
Anyway, that was me stealing everyone's ideas. So,
no, it's good. I think there's loads of really good stuff there. So I'll open it up to Rob and to Ed. How do you advise someone who wants to get better and develop their primary game?
I think if you're starting out, looking at your game you don't have to look at your opponents when you learn. You want to learn the basics, right? So as Chris was saying, it's really just reading the missions and understanding how you maximize your scoring.
Yes.
So like Chris was saying, getting your natural expansion, getting out, going, can I score my 10s? And from that point, can I score my secondaries as well while I'm playing my primary game?
Yes.
So I think that's the first step when you're developing as a player to play your game. Completely. And then I think later on it does turn into, okay, now I'm doing what I want to do. Can I make my opponent do what I want them to do as well, and have to react to these threats that I can project with and try and stop them doing from what they want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a real tempo question there, isn't there? And often you'll find those initial primary exchanges are very different if you've gone first versus if you've gone second as well, right? In terms of where am I able to be, what am I able to do, what can I lock down? And often actually you're already having to respond to some sort of opening moves, some opening plays, versus getting to make them. So I think gradually learning how that feels and what you need to do in those different situations against different armies is really useful.
And trying to think more than one turn ahead, I think, is very important as well.
Yes.
You see someone jump on that middle objective and you go, I want that middle objective. And you suddenly throw 200 points of units on there, and really, if you had that 200 points of units in turn 4, it would have been a completely different game.
Yes, I'm very guilty of doing this sometimes. Where you get a bit gung ho, you commit too hard too early, and that can be really, really bad. And there's little intricacies that come with understanding the different requirements of primary. We've talked about different things already, and the fact that sometimes actually, and this is a bit of a ninth adaptation, sometimes going down to a 5 isn't actually very disastrous in the grand scheme of things in some of these missions, right? Because of the way they're weighted, there's often a lot of points at the end, and often there are other opportunities to get your points back in different ways. So Scorched Earth's obviously was a really interesting one for this. And some armies are better at doing burning objectives than others, but there's always a way of making up some primary later if you make a strong enough breakthrough or lock down enough of the board strongly enough that you're then going to have the time to do stuff on that objective. And if not, you do what I was doing against Rob yesterday, which was pretending I was going to burn it with some idiots so that he had to keep shooting the idiots instead of my helicopters. I think that's definitely something that is well worth understanding. I think too, understanding the kind of tempo with transports and with OC in general is really useful, right? What is a genuinely strong amount of OC on a point for your faction in a given moment? How do you get that effectively? What kind of tools do you have to guard an objective and make it really difficult to deal with? Do you have like free heroic intervention? Do you have fights first that you can put on a point? Do you have lone op stratagems available so you can make it so they can't just shoot you off of points? There's also Ed's doing a little dance. There's all sorts of things. And then the sequencing with transports that's a bit pernickety as well is, sometimes, you play against people who go, oh, I've shoved my rhino on here. And you're like, wonderful. I put more than 2 or 3 OC on your point. What do you do now? And they're like, oh, now I've got to get out of my rhino and do stuff. And it's like, just putting a transport on isn't going to hold much. So if you're putting just transports on, you need to be doing that in a baity kind of way, but you can't be locking down points with that tentative a foothold. But big killer bricks or big monsters, things with good OC are obviously very different in that sense. Ed, did you have anything to add here? Oh, he's muted.
We didn't talk about going first or second, which is
the
most obvious one.
Let's do that.
Yeah, so first of all, a lot of missions give you like 1 million points for the luxury. Like if you go second, you go, oh, sound. In my last turn, I get 25 primary. What do I have to do for the rest of the game? Well, I probably get a 5, and a 10, and then I've got 45. Oh, this game's easy. It's great. And then when you go first, you go, cool, didn't want to step out here. Turns out I'm going to have to go full send because otherwise my opponent is just going to go, well, at the end of the game, I'm going to get 25 points on primary. I'm going to get a 5 and a 10. This game's easy.
Exactly.
It's the position you want to be in. You don't want your opponent to be in.
Completely. And that makes you think differently about how you spend assets, doesn't it? Because you've got in your back of your mind, you're like, I need something to make a good push at the end to get on some points. And if I burn out now, getting involved in a Barney, and I run out of puff to do that, then I'm not going to benefit from that opportunity. And it's something they've built into the game in recent editions to essentially counterbalance first turn advantage as it used to historically exist, right? And it's very powerful.
Yeah, so I actually have 2 more points. The first one is know what your opponent's primary game plan is going to be. Like, you don't have to know specifically on turn 3, they're going to pincer me and they're going to... like, look at the list. Do they have Inceptors? Yes. Okay, they're going for my home objective and or, teleport home is in my deployment zone. Do they not have that? Cool, great, okay. Are they holding primary? Are we going to have to slam our heads off each other in the middle? Or are they going to try and go around me? If you know that, you can change your play up. And then also look at the mission and say it's, hold 1, hold 2. Well, that's really easy to do. But think about which objectives you're holding. If your opponent can't get to your objective easily, if it's going to take them like until turn 4 to get there, and then they maybe score out on turn 5 if you don't respond, you can just not hold your objective. You can hold the 3 in the middle and go, you're probably holding 1 because I put all my resources right in the middle of the board.
Yes.
Don't feel emotionally attached to your home objective.
There's a lot of armies that can abandon it, really. Yeah.
Every army I play. Turns out. And abandoning it doesn't necessarily mean not having any unit there. It could be having, a 45-point chaff unit sitting in the back lines, understanding that the 3 bolter inceptors are going to kill them. But they can't move on to it until the next turn anyway. So, comes down turn 2, they can score it on turn 3. Maybe there's something that you do there to make them come down on turn 3. But yeah, just don't be attached to your home objective. Take theirs instead. Theirs is way tastier.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly it can combine very well with playing tactical. This is something I often advise people when we're doing the mentoring, is that tactical cards, your best shot at getting a good score across all the spread of tactical cards involves having broken into enemy territory at some stage. So you need to be strong somewhere and push through somewhere at some point to have the best shot at getting the cards. Otherwise, you have that kind of halfway point. Oh, I met you, I bounced off. Now I'm just stuck scoring the stuff I can score in the half of the board I'm still in, right? So decisive breakthroughs are really useful to have. And as you say, understanding what the opponent wants to do is also really useful. This is something, this is a UK TC trick I've always quite liked, is that it's the sort of reverse sell of, you've always got that one big ruin that you want to sort of load up counterintuitively because it's opposite their safe objective. So you're like, well, what have I got that's quick enough to cross that and cause trouble on that ostensibly so a safe objective? And they're doing the same. And then you get that kind of primary vortex where everyone's running around in a big circle. So that's always really good fun as well. Cool. Anything else on the developmental tips, guys?
I think having a plan in deployment for where you want to push up primary.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are deploying, just go, you know what, that's where I want to push. This is where I want to set up a primary denial unit. And just knowing what you want to do when you drop your army, so you don't suddenly put your army down and go, cool, I need a 5-inch advance to get a 10 turn 2.
Yes. So this is where things like scout moves, amazing for getting you where you need to go. Having some infiltrators, knowing where you would put them, again, whether you get first or second drop is really, really useful as well. What are the little tools and how do I deploy them in what order to make sure I've got things in the places they need to be? Because obviously this combos with scoring the cards, right? A lot of the cards for tactical are scored in and around the objectives. So you need to have a plan for at least being near those places and being able to combine that with the interplay on the primary.
Something that's really nice is scouts. If you get the first drop...
Oh, that's so annoying.
Let's say you're playing UKTC. You know what I love doing? Because, scouts cost like 60 to 70 points. They are cheap. Unless you're playing Purge the Foe, do not do this on Purge the Foe. I really, really, really like putting them at your opponent's natural expansion behind a wall. So they can't be charged through the wall. They've got to come round. So if they commit to it, sure, they can potentially pile back round. But the way charges work, they're going to be on the wrong side of the wall and you're going to shoot them or charge them. Or they just leave them. But it zones out their forward infiltrate. So like, oh, well, I guess I can put something in the middle of the board. Sucks to be you. That's where I was going anyway. I don't care. So, stop from putting stuff there is good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's where all the little tricky units, little tricky units and rules really come into their own.
It took me 6 months of 10th edition to stop doing this.
Should we briefly shout out Purge the Foe and explain why you don't do that, Ed?
So Purge the Foe is the only mission where you can get primary on turn 1. And that's because it's a hold one, kill... hold one, words. Hold one, hold more, kill one, kill more. So you can't hold any objectives turn 1. That's the same as normal. But if you kill a unit on turn 1, you get 4 points. If you kill more units than your opponent, you get 8 points. It's really hard to kill anything turn 1, unless your opponent is a fish and they put 5 flayed ones really riskily out in the open. And I can see Rob grinning because I've done it against him multiple times this edition and given him 8 points and then gone, oh, bugger, I'm going first, and I've given my opponent 8 on primary.
It's an enormous double whammy, isn't it? Because you know they're very likely to have better control over the kills. You know they've got a much better chance of holding more at the end, and you've got 8 points down at the start. So you're like, this is now a rough situation. My Death Guard actually had this in the final RTT game for John's league the other day, where this guard player should put a Vindicator Assassin very in the middle of the board. Looked beautiful, very thematic. And I was like, I am just going to run up to him and kill him now because I could really do... I've gone first. I could really do with getting a kill on this. And Blake vs. Crawler and a bloat drone both went into this guy and he lived. He just made every save. He took 10 mortar shots to the face with a smile and was like, no, I'm still fine. And then the guard got a kill on like my spawn or something. So I started at 8 down as well. You're just like, oh, this is such a ropey situation when it goes that way. So yeah, Purge is a particularly rough mission for this. I guess the other one that's worth a shout out is Sites of Power, where characters are really valuable, right? Having characters on points. And this is something I suspect we may see in the future with the new rules coming, but knowing what little add-ons are needed in a primary and building those into your list is really good. So do you have characters who can go and just babysit a point, look after it, make sure you tick off and get extra primary? That's a really useful thing to have. And we'll segue into the final section on this now, which is shouting out a few of the good units that can help you with primary play. We've alluded to a few of them already. What kinds of things do you guys like and what sorts of tools can they offer you?
I like wraiths because they're big and they're OC too, and they don't die, and they go fast.
Yep, exactly that. Wraiths are amazing. They're really obnoxious to kill. They literally grow back, so if you commit and you get it wrong, they come back. They have good OC, and they can tie you around on the primary. Really, really good.
Anything with regen, really, isn't it?
Like anything with regen,
isn't it?
Really powerful.
One model out on the objective, the rest of the units behind the wall. You take some shots. You've drop the guy who's out there, and then on your turn you regen onto the objective, and then you get the
I used to love that with GSC. You just have the idiots with the good guns just stick out on a point, go ha ha ha, and then they kill you back, but they don't kill a unit. Then you grow back onto it, just like, oh yes, I am going to keep doing this. Or get sorry, really wonderful. So regen's really powerful, and that forces a different kind of commitment.
On the regen front, just make sure that your opponent, when they tell you they've got regen, just ask them when it happens, because some regen happens at the end of the command phase. Yes, I am talking about you Necrons. Necrons do not get to score cheeky extra primary.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's interesting.
I think a lot of the Necron players you've played this edition have done that wrong, probably.
That's quite possible.
Because it's an easy way to get extra points. But,
I mean, I've played them a lot with Jakari, so it hasn't mattered much whether.
Yeah, the squads are either dead or not dead. There is no in between. There's no, I've killed a model.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick shout out to Ashley Brown, who's in the chat. Give me my weekly reminder to remember my 2 CP combat interrupt. I love you, Ashley. It was nice to chat to you at the ITT. I'm literally never going to live this down, am I? Absolutely amazing. And Painted Celestine asked, do you gents find some armies it's hard to regain primary control once your opponent takes it from you? In my Tau games, I've found issues reclaiming primary. I think for Tau, it's a faff because one of the units I'm about to shout out isn't there, which is absolute melee push units, right? Something that can just go and do a colossal amount of damage and physically knock something off a point by being there as well, bodying it, and then out OCing it, which obviously isn't a very Tau way to play, and it does make their primary game a little bit more fiddly. But something like Exalted 8-bound, that's just going to run in, slam huge amounts of damage, or like a chosen squad or an incubi brick, something that can just reach out and cause catastrophic damage, is a really good tool to have in primary play, because it's such a big hammer and you can use it to just clear things off points when you need to.
Yeah, definitely. I think another type of unit is a fight first high OC unit. So
yes,
a Judicia with 10 assault intercessors, or Lilith with 10 witches going, I have 21 OC of unit here that you cannot shoot. What are you going to do about it?
Absolutely. It's absolutely massive in that sense. And Death Guard, obviously, with the Foul Blight Spawn, this is another one of those kinds of bricks on maps and terrain that allow you to stash a big brick away on a point are really, really, really valuable.
It gives you the projection as well, because you go, cool, if you come to the middle one, I might just throw this 21 OC in the middle as well.
Yes, yeah. And so speed and reach, but also sort of fight phase control, all incredibly useful at helping to boss the primary. Cool. Any other concluding remarks, guys, before we move this one along?
Yeah, I think there's a kind of it's not a direct way of playing primary, but move blocking and sticky objectives, I think.
Sticky's really good. Yeah.
So you can just go onto a point, and if you do get that sticky on it, you don't need to be there anymore. Unless you need to screen, you can just leave it and not give people slingshot charges. The same for move blocking. If a unit can't get to an objective, it's yours. And those two combined together, which is obviously a very Drukhari way of playing with the Beast Pack and Cabalites. It just means you can just control a point without actually having to commit any resource there, because your opponent just can't get there.
Completely, yeah. And I think I guess the counterpoint to that as well is making sure you, as the other player, have ways of jumping into and reaching faraway points, because otherwise your opponent can just leave them, walk off, and come and fight you, right? So having quick, maneuverable, fire and fading type units or teleporting type units to keep an opponent honest and force them to screen the points, even if they are sticking them, is pretty essential. Otherwise, they can just roll up the board with everything, and then it's a lot more difficult to deal with them. Excellent. All right, that's our initial tips on the primary, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments if you have any other additional thoughts on this, or you have any particular tips or tricks for helping to develop at the primary. As a reminder, please do hit like and subscribe. We massively appreciate it. Leave us a comment. Let us know how you're doing. It all helps feed the algorithmic chaos gods, which does us a world of good. And thank you to Martin in the chat for signing up to become a member again. And a reminder, you can absolutely do that and support the channel that way if you are so minded. So we're now going to move it forwards to listener questions. and my Discord isn't loading, which is an interesting curveball because that makes looking at the questions a bit difficult.
While you're loading that up, then do you want me to tell the story about DHL and why they're or DPD, why they're a terrible company?
I'd love you to do that, Ed. Yes. So, go on.
I've got a tournament this weekend. I've changed my list. I need another 10 ball boys. The reasons for this are not particularly important. The problem is I bought them from Element Games, and Element are usually pretty good at getting things delivered. You know, they send it to the courier sends it to me. Job's a good one. Get a tracking email. It says, your delivery will be here on Monday between 9:22 and 10:22. Fantastic. I was at a stag do, so I've taken a couple of days off. Less to recover and more just to make sure that I've had time to do everything else. Lovely stuff. So sort of gets to about 11 o'clock and I've been engrossed painting and I look at my phone, it's like 3 missed calls. Oh, bugger. Oh, well, where I live, it's not labyrinthine. It's a gated building, but the gate's open. It's locked open at the moment. It has been for a month. And there's multiple maps and my address is on the box. No worries. I'm sure it'll be there. And I open up the track email. It says, your parcel was delivered. It was signed for by Fawcett. All right. Weird. Not how I sign my name. Also, wouldn't use lower caps. So immediate. Also, it wasn't me that did it because I'm me and I'd know. Then I look down further and there's a picture of a very generic man's hand holding a box with a black shirt on in a really close taken picture so you can't see in the background. I'm like, oh, sound. So what's happened is the delivery driver's taken a picture of himself, signed it as me, not being able to find me, and then just chucked it back in the van. So I spent about an hour and a half of my life on the phone to DPD over the last 2 days, and I keep going to an Indian call centre, and everyone I speak to is super lovely and super helpful, but the problem is their system's crap because they're not actually in control. They're like, oh, yeah, we'll send a message to the depot. Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't want you to send them an email. I want you to, while I'm on the phone, call them and talk to them. Have some sort of internal system that works. Anyway, after multiple calls, I gave up. I was like, okay, they're not going to be here. I'm going to have to start ringing Warhammer World to see if they've got any in stock. The joys of living in Nottingham. You're probably going to be all right if you want some last minute stock. And I went out to get myself, top up my water. And there's just a box outside my door. Sound.
Nice.
So the driver's obviously been given a bollocking and he's come back and my poor boys are here.
Yeah, it's perilous. I mean, Warhammer delivery must be through the roof these days. I wonder how many Warhammer parcels are getting delivered around this country by people every day. But I'm glad you were able to run the gauntlet. I certainly do. Yeah, I have some old world bits that are currently still unaccounted for in postage limbo somewhere. So hopefully they will eventually appear. All right, I've got the questions up, boys. We've not got many, and then I think Chris needs to go to bed. Maybe we sing him a lullaby on the way out because he's looking very.
To be fair, I've just been reading the Discord questions.
Oh, very nice. So, Brainseller asks, with the new shifts in the meta leaning towards big swathes of green covering the board, what's a good counter to Horde armies taking over primary control and then holding the tempo on it?
I'm still kind of interested in that 18 Wraith Hypercrypt. I know I said it like it was a joke, but when I was thinking about in the lead up to teams, I was like, what could I do to deal with Green Tide if it's an issue? And then I ended up not feeling like it was going to be an issue. But the heavy destroyer brick that they can bring in, up and down, come in strat reserve, get full hit rerolls, sustained hits on 5s, you get like 50 odd hits from your 36 shots. My favorite sort of maths. Delicious. And and it's like strength 6 AP 1 damage or something, which is just the perfect profile for clearing through orcs. So that sort of thing is quite good. And then if you're running wraiths, even the pistols pick up a few. They're tanky enough that yes, the green horde chips away at them, but it's not too bad. They're bulky enough that you can kind of line objectives. As Celestine was saying, you put something on the front and you just go, you're going to have to kill 3 wraiths to even put a model on here. Sucks to be you. Something like that might be the way forward.
Brainseller plays Tyranids.
There you go. So for Tyranids, if we're thinking about Tyranids specifically, I think it's the blocking, it's the block life, isn't it? It's the being in the way.
You've got to be so careful, haven't you? Because, boys with, just rockets can blast a hole and then charge and then end up through that gap.
Yeah, so, it's very difficult.
It's about spacing it out so that they can't charge one thing and then end up somewhere else. and chop that up as well.
And again, the sort of big monsters type build, but also potentially work locking down the points with just big bugs on it that boys themselves aren't going to scratch, and then they can't get enough bases on the points.
Yeah.
But I think some of the fundamentals we were talking about already about just make sure you clear and screen out a space on the board to get you onto 1 or 2 points and build from there. Keep your army together, focus down chunks of that army at a time, and control where it can teleport to because it really likes to do it. And then Mega Knobs, it's more about just hosing down a bit of it at a time and trying to get it as dead as you can, as quickly as you can, really. You just need very high intensity damage answers to Mega Knobs.
The other option, and this is a Tyranid-specific one, is buy 6 Gladiator Reapers, paint them black, and change your army.
Yes, that is also an option. Mechanica says, can we replace Ed with a puppet that says Wraiths every time he's asked a question? What do you think, Ed?
Wraiths!
Good lad. Excellent. So next question is from Titchy, who I'm hoping to play in our TTS league soon. So thoughts on the new mission decks focus on battle line? Will it shift list building dramatically?
Wraiths!
I think it'll have some degree of impact, but I think the game has always been with battle line. Some armies battle line lines up really nicely with what they want to do. Other armies just making everything dead is the best way of doing what they want to do, and I don't imagine this is going to change that radically.
Not to soapbox, but there are 2 things that Games Workshop tried to make relevant that never managed to make relevant. It's leadership and it's troops, and they fuck it up every time. The only time they were good is when you were taking them as CP batteries. So no is the answer. That's my hot take.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. We're going to do an episode on the new stuff when we have full view of it. But at first glance, I'm not sure it'll be necessarily as impactful. Although actually, whatever's that thing there's a few things that do look interesting, which we'll get into. Finally, Luke Harris asks, is it worth focusing on becoming a faction specialist as a new player? Or at what point would you think it's beneficial to play other armies? That's an interesting question.
I think while you're learning, just get one army down.
Yeah, I think that's right.
The game's complicated enough. You don't want to have different armies in your head at the same time.
Yes.
And then when you get comfortable with that and the core rules, I think it's more about learning the core rules, sticking with one faction. Once you have the core rules down, you can try something new if you want to try a different playstyle.
Completely. And I think exactly how you go about this depends a bit on the kind of player you are as well, right? Like if you just really like one of the armies and that's what you want to do and you're going to be doing it, then as you learn it, you'll be driven along by the sort of passion that you have for it, but also it's a bit out of your hands how that army gets on in the game for a while, right? So you might find yourself struggling in certain ways because that army just doesn't happen to be particularly competitively viable at the time. If you are coming into this looking to compete and be good at competing, then I think absolutely play one army, but also think and get advice on what that army is, I think is a really valid thing, right? Is there an army that has a book that's going to be relevant by the look of it for a long time? Take a Necrons or an Orcs, these kind of books. It's very obvious at first glance, this is going to be able to do a whole bunch of stuff and it should stay that way for the foreseeable, right? So if you're able to be more tactical with your jumping on point and then really get the reps and experience in with that army, I think that goes a long way and means that some of the variables are less out of your hands in terms of where you sit in the game.
I think a big thing as well is not to chase the army when you're starting out.
Yes, 100%.
By the time you understand the game well enough, it will have taken several nerfs.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And this is, I've had sort of people I've sort of coached a long time in the past where it's, before you can get any basics core skills down, they've hopped onto another thing. And you're like, you've essentially reset because this requires different skills. You haven't really got the ones you needed to play the last one, and you're jumping and you're jumping and you're jumping. And I think that makes sort of sustained growth and development very difficult. And as you say, this game changes so fast. By the time you've got that in your hands, it'll be on to something else. So I think definitely getting the core skills down with specialism is the way. And I certainly found, I don't know what you guys found. You sort of grow out of that first army or two naturally. You kind of arrive at a point where I just want to. Rob's a lifer. Yeah. But I played Death Guard. I felt like with Death Guard, I was like, actually, I want to do a bunch of things Death Guard just cannot do. And that I'd arrived at a point of seeing and understanding the game in a set of ways and knowing I wanted certain tools I just couldn't access in that rule set at the time.
I started with gun lines and ended up with Drukhari because I got so bored of just standing there and shooting things.
That's fair. That
is
fair.
8th edition where we played mathematically correct lists.
Yeah.
Good time.
We had a great time at that casual event. But I think picking up a new army is exciting as well. I know it's not really a new army, but I've started Ynnari, and I've gone, you know what I want in this? I want to take 10 Wraithblades because I want to try a different play style. I've got a big tanky thing that I can just push and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. And I think that's where you're being led by ideas about what you'd like to try out and add next. And you need a very good all-round understanding of the game and the different options before you can really make astute choices on that front, I think. And so playing into a bunch of armies with one is definitely a great way of doing it at the start. Wonderful. I think that is it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been lovely to have you all here. We will be back again in the very near future. Be well out there. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.